Samstapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Welcome to this series of talks on the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. This is the fifth talk in the series, and it will be on Swami Niranjanananda, 1862 to 1904. Swami Niranjanananda was known as Niranjan or Nitya Niranjan Ghosh in his pre-monastic life. The exact details regarding his birthday are not known, but it was probably in 1862 that he was born. The place where he was born is Rajahat, Vishnupur, 24 Paraganas, a few kilometers away from Kolkata. Niranjan's father's name was Ambika Charan Ghosh. When Niranjan was in his teens, he was sent to his uncle's house at Ahirutala, West Bengal, for higher education. His uncle's name was Pierichan Mitra. It was there that he came across and was inducted by a group of spiritualists who used to conduct seances to communicate with dead people. Definition of spirituality. One of the things that I would like to warn you about is the definition of spirit or spirituality. I googled spiritual medium and got a definition for spiritualism and spiritism as the following. Spiritualism. This movement emphasizes the possibility of communication with spirits of the dead and belief that spirits evolved in higher spiritual realms. And spiritism is defined as a similar belief system where mediums act as intermediaries to connect the physical and spiritual worlds. According to Gemini, Google's AI-generated chat box, communicating with people who have died is spiritualism. In the Ramakrishna order, we have been using the word spirituality for many years to mean that which is not matter or phenomena. Metaphysically, it refers to that which exists beyond matter, called spirit or Atman or Brahman, and which is something like the concept of noumenon as opposed to phenomenon. Swamis like Vivekananda, Ashokananda, etc., they use the word spirit and spirituality in these contexts, not in the way it is generally used in the West to refer to communicating with spirits or performing seances and things like that to communicate with people who have died. The Google definition of spiritualism is related to conducting seances and the like, communicating with the deceased persons or ghosts, which is a very limited and not like the way we define it. But in the West, they use the word spirituality in this context. And I have seen at the spirit, mind, body festivals also, they tend to use this definition of spirit or spirituality. But here in this context, when I'm talking about Niranjan's early life as a spiritual medium, I will also be using it in the same context. Niranjan's early life as a spiritual medium. Niranjan, when he was in his teens, was sent to his uncle's residence to allow him to pursue his education. As mentioned before, his uncle's name was Pierichan Mitra, who used to live at Ahiratala, West Calcutta. Pierichan was the leader of a group of spiritualists who would communicate with dead people. Niranjan joined this group and progressed to be a medium. He accumulated psychic powers which enabled him to cure illnesses. Once there was a man who came to Niranjan who was suffering from insomnia. Niranjan used his psychic powers to cure the man. But this also may have planted the seed of renunciation in Niranjan, because this man, in spite of his riches, was suffering. This made worldly attainments seem insipid to Niranjan. I do not know if this incident occurred before or after Niranjan's meeting with Sri Ramakrishna, but it seems to have contributed to his giving up the world. In early 1882, the group of spiritualists led by Pierichan with Niranjan as the medium tried to hypnotize Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar. The psychics had heard that Sri Ramakrishna was very advanced spiritually and wanted to test him out. They thought that if they could hypnotize Sri Ramakrishna, it would be a considerable achievement. With this intention, they came to Dakshineshwar, but Ramakrishna was not in his room. Sri Ramakrishna had gone to Jadu Malik's garden house for a stroll. So the group went to Jadu's house and found Sri Ramakrishna. There they introduced themselves as spiritualists. When Sri Ramakrishna's eyes fell on Niranjan, he commented that the boy is very good and was extremely guileless. Perichand replied that Niranjan was his nephew and that he could hypnotize very well. Sri Ramakrishna warned them against getting mixed up into conducting seances and the like to communicate with ghosts. But in his childlike manner, Sri Ramakrishna agreed to be used by the group to be hypnotized. In spite of the best efforts and attempts for about an hour, the group could not hypnotize Sri Ramakrishna. This resulted in Pierichan confessing defeat by saying to Sri Ramakrishna that he was a great soul with a strong mind who couldn't be hypnotized. Sri Ramakrishna also told Niranjan aside to come here, meaning Dakshineshwar, often. This was the beginning of another intimate relationship between Sri Ramakrishna and another one of his monastic disciples, with Niranjan severing his ties with the group of spiritualists. Indeed, Sri Ramakrishna at one of Niranjan's visits to Dakshineshwar told him that if he allowed his mind to dwell on ghosts, he will become a ghost. But if he allowed his mind to think of God, he will be filled with God. Between these two, which one is he going to choose? Niranjan obviously chose God above anything else. Niranjan's initiation into spiritual life. Niranjan was working in an office. After work, he once visited Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna wrote a mantra on his tongue. Niranjan could not stop repeating the mantra. He also saw fireflies. This occurred without interruption for a few days. After some time, Niranjan went back to Sri Ramakrishna because he thought he was losing his mind. Sri Ramakrishna told him that that was the experience of Ajapam Japa, and he withdrew the power of the mantra. The experience of Niranjan is nothing new. A lot of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, whether monastic or lay, had some sort of experience at the time of their initiation into spiritual life. Spiritual teachings of Sri Ramakrishna to Niranjan. Doing things for other people compared to doing things for God. Sri Ramakrishna once said to Niranjan that if you do 99 good things for ordinary people and one bad thing to people, they will forget the 99 good things and only remember the one bad thing. In comparison, if you do 99 bad things to God and only one good thing for God, he or she will remember the one good thing and forget the 99 bad things. This is said to be the difference between the love of God and the love of man or woman. Number 2, the urgency of God realization. On one of Niranjan's first visits to Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna rushed to him and said, "O Niranjan, the days are fleeting. When will you wholeheartedly give your mind to God realization? This life will be in vain without the realization of God." Niranjan was dumbfounded. He thought, who is this man who cares so much for my spiritual welfare? Those of you who are familiar with the life of Swami Vivekananda will be aware that Naren had a similar experience after his initial interaction with Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was deeply concerned for his spiritual unfoldment. Niranjan was, however, initially suspicious of Sri Ramakrishna's motives, but he soon realized that Sri Ramakrishna was authentic and genuine. Number 3, response to people slandering Sri Ramakrishna. The comparison of Sri Ramakrishna instructing Swami Yogananda and Swami Niranjanananda. Once, while traveling by a nauka or canoe, there were some people who criticized the motives and conduct of Sri Ramakrishna. This happened once in the presence of Yogin or Swami Yogananda, and once in the presence of Niranjan or Swami Niranjanananda on separate occasions. After Sri Ramakrishna heard this, he gave different instructions to Yogin and Niranjan. Yogin was mild-mannered and too mellow. So Sri Ramakrishna asked him why he had not stood up to the bullies. Niranjan, on the other hand, was high-strung and threatened to capsize the canoe with the other passengers on board. In other words, he was overcome with anger. Sri Ramakrishna admonished this and said to him that he should control his anger. In other words, in the same situation, Sri Ramakrishna's instructions to his disciples were different. This is why it is important to be careful in reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna had the insight to know the individual through different means and reacted to them individually. Renouncing Kamini and Kanchana and truthfulness. Just like the other monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, like Gangadhar, Niranjan got his fair share of teachings about renouncing Kamini and Kanchana. Once Niranjan had to accept employment in an office. When Sri Ramakrishna heard about it, he was not happy with Niranjan because he thought he was aspiring for monastic life. But later he learnt that Niranjan had only accepted the job to be able to support his mother. When Sri Ramakrishna heard this, he was happy. He said that the job or money will not contaminate him. Then someone protested to Sri Ramakrishna, saying, "How can we maintain our families without having a job?" To this, Sri Ramakrishna replied that renunciation is for the chosen few. But in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, there are many instances of Sri Ramakrishna talking about the renunciation of Kamini and Kanchana, or lust and gold, even to lay devotees. The example given above was respect to Kanchana. Next, the renunciation of Kamini or lust. Sri Ramakrishna was overjoyed when he learned that Niranjan was not attached to women. In fact, Niranjan told Sri Ramakrishna that he never dwells or thinks about women. This is a great achievement because human beings spend a lot of time thinking about the opposite sex or same sex depending on one's orientation. Sri Ramakrishna was overjoyed that Niranjan was not attached to women. There is a reference in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna which Swami Chetanananda quotes, where Niranjan compares marriage to the whirlpool of Vishalakshi in Kamarpukur. On another occasion, Sri Ramakrishna observed that Niranjan took some extra ghee. Ghee was believed to increase lust or the sexual impulse like an aphrodisiac. Then Sri Ramakrishna asked Niranjan if he was going to start abducting people's daughters and wives because he had taken extra ghee. This is another lesson on Kamini or lust that Niranjan learnt at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna. The next teaching is about truthfulness. It is recorded in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna that one day Sri Ramakrishna commented that Niranjan is untruthful. He said that he would come to Dakshineshwar soon to see Sri Ramakrishna, but he didn't. Hearing this, Niranjan apologized to Sri Ramakrishna. Number 5. Sri Ramakrishna reconciling free will and predestination. The following incident is taken from Swami Saradananda's Leela Prasanga, or Great Master, which is narrated by Swami Chetanananda. Once, the boy disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, which included Niranjan, were having a discussion between themselves about the existence of free will or predestination. Free will is when we all have the freedom to act as we like, while predestination is when we don't have any such freedom. Sri Ramakrishna got wind of the conversation. Sri Ramakrishna said that ultimately it is by God's will or predestination that everything happened in the past and will happen in the future. Nonetheless, at the empirical level, the individual may get greater freedom to maneuver through divine grace. Sri Ramakrishna then gave the example of a cow tied to a pole. The cow can only move according to the length of the rope. Being tied to the pole is predestination, and moving about to the length of the rope is free will. According to the whims of the master, the cow may be untied, free will, tied to another post, change in circumstance, or lengthen the rope, increase in free will. Similarly, God may give an individual free will on the empirical level when one practices spiritual disciplines. This is what is called divine grace. Through divine grace, the length of the rope is lengthened. This is the way Sri Ramakrishna reconciled free will with predestination. The divine dimensions of Niranjan. Sri Ramakrishna often said that his disciples had a divine side. I personally find this difficult to understand. He said that Rakhal, or Swami Brahmananda, was the eternal playmate of Sri Krishna. Sashi and Sarath were companions of Christ. Baburam was a partial manifestation of Sri Radha. Yogin was a partial manifestation of Arjuna. Naren, or Swami Vivekananda, was one of the Sapta Rishis from the Sapta Rishi Mandala. These sayings, from our limited perspective, are hard to understand. With respect to Niranjan, he said that he was a partial manifestation of Ramachandra. But Sri Ramakrishna also said to Naren and others that he who was Rama and he who was Krishna is now Ramakrishna. In other words, Sri Ramakrishna and Niranjan were both Ramachandra. These things are difficult to understand. Sri Ramakrishna also said that Niranjan was an Ishvara Koti. Swami Saradananda, in the Great Master, defines certain concepts like Prakriti Leena Purusha, etc. But I don't remember if he defined Ishvara Koti. Whatever may be the case, he considered Niranjan to be a part of his inner circle. Niranjan as Sri Ramakrishna's gatekeeper at Shampukur and Kosipur. When Sri Ramakrishna was diagnosed with throat cancer, he was moved to Shampukur and Kosipur. Given his medical condition and the belief that the touch of impure persons would aggravate his symptoms, the disciples took the decision that they would not allow all and sundry to visit Sri Ramakrishna. Niranjan was assigned the duty of being Sri Ramakrishna's gatekeeper. While in this role, he exercised his discretion as to who he will allow and who he will prevent from entering Sri Ramakrishna's room. But this has sometimes landed Niranjan in trouble and caused friction with not only the people that he prevented, but also with his brother disciples. Number 1, Noti Binodini. Binodini was an actress in Girish Ghosha's plays. On one occasion, in September 1884, Sri Ramakrishna went to see one of Girish's plays called Chaitanya Leela, in which Binodini was in the cast acting as Chaitanya. Actresses during that time did not have a good reputation. Nonetheless, Binodini saluted Sri Ramakrishna at the play. After that initial meeting, Binodini felt a tremendous attraction to meet Sri Ramakrishna again. But Sri Ramakrishna was in Shampukur, laid up with his throat cancer. Binodini longed to see Sri Ramakrishna again before there was a turn for the worse. But his future monastic disciples were against anyone meeting him and disturbing him. Binodini then got the help of Kalipada Ghosh, who was Girish Ghosh's brother. He suggested that Binodini dress like an English gentleman and accompany him to Sri Ramakrishna. Niranjan was the gatekeeper. Kalipada introduced Binodini as one of his European friends. Niranjan let them both in. Once inside, Binodini removed her makeup and confessed to Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was highly amused. He then praised her faith, devotion, courage, and blessed her. The boy disciples later found out and could not be angry. Number 2, the woman who cherished the Madhurbhava attitude towards Sri Ramakrishna. There was an old woman who was mentally challenged, who used to visit Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar with Vijay Krishna Goswami and sing for him. But Sri Ramakrishna was weary of her because she cherished the attitude of Madhurbhava towards him. She once came to Kasipur to see Sri Ramakrishna, but Niranjan stopped her. When she was thus prevented, she became hysterical. Hearing her, Sri Ramakrishna asked Sashi to bring her to him. After that, she started to visit more frequently. Niranjan used to not let her in. Some of the future monastic disciples sympathized with her, like Rakal, whereas Niranjan took an unbending attitude towards her. Swami Chaitanananda also gives the example of other people who Niranjan prevented from entering Sri Ramakrishna's room, like Ramchandra Datta and Atul. After Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, the next chronological phase of Swami Niranjanananda's life was taking to monasticism with his brother disciples. This was initially informally at Anpur, West Bengal in December 1886, and later formally, probably in January 1887 at Baranagar. After taking the vows of sannyasa, Niranjanananda went on pilgrimage to many places, starting with Puri in Orissa, Deoghar in Jharkhand, Varanasi, Allahabad, Raipur, Sri Lanka, among other places. Niranjan also spent some time caring for his brother disciples and Holy Mother. This included caring for Swami Yogananda when he was suffering from smallpox in Allahabad. He also did likewise for Latu or Swami Adbhutananda when the latter had pneumonia. He was there for Balaram and Ramchandra Datta during their last days. He helped Girish Ghosh by taking him to Holy Mother when he was suffering from depression. When Harish, who was mentally challenged, was disturbing Holy Mother's peace, Swami Saradananda and Niranjanananda rushed to Kamarpukur to protect her. Swami Niranjanananda also travelled with Swami Vivekananda when the latter returned from the West in early 1897. Some of the second generation of monks influenced by Swami Niranjanananda. Some of the second generation of monks who Swami Niranjanananda influenced were Swamis Shuddhananda, Nishchayananda, and Achalananda. Swami Shuddhananda was known as Sudhir. He was initiated by Swami Vivekananda and was the fifth president of the Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission. It was because of him that Swami Vivekananda's works were translated from English to Bengali. Swami Niranjanananda is the person who gave Swami Shuddhananda sannyasa on 16 September 1898 and inspired him. Another person who Niranjanananda inspired was Suraj Rao, who later became Swami Nishchayananda. Suraj was an army officer who gave up his job and was initiated by Swami Vivekananda. The third person of the second generation of monks who was inspired by Swami Niranjanananda was Kedarnath, who later became Swami Achalananda. Kedarnath was from Varanasi, who met Niranjanananda in Kankal. After being inspired by him, Kedarnath gave up his job and was given the ochre cloth by Swami Niranjanananda. But Niranjanananda first discouraged and tested Kedarnath by pointing out to him the pitfalls of monastic life. Kedarnath later also served Niranjanananda when he was ill at Calcutta. Swami Niranjanananda's end. Swami Niranjanananda, towards the latter part of his life, had a number of health-related complications. This included dysentery, cholera, etc. His end came on 9 May 1904 in Haridwar, when he left the world heroically. Thank you. This is the talk on Niranjanananda. On some of the disciples, there is not as much material available. On some of the others, there is a lot of material. So this is another example of one of Sri Ramakrishna's monastic disciples who was transformed by Sri Ramakrishna. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.